Hello everyone, Will here from BubVisuals, and what better way to start the brand new year than with a brand new phone? Except for phones cost money. So today I'm here with the J3, which is a $100 smartphone from Samsung. Now, the rules of this video were simple. Find a decent smartphone for $100 or less from a reputable brand that does make flagships. This is mainly because while there are some great smartphones out there with great specs from slightly more underground brands, there is a lot of dodgy brands out there with poor customer support, and while the phones may have much better specs, they may not always be reliable. So to start off, I think we should take a look at the specs. The Samsung J3 is rocking a quad-core processor running at 1.4 GHz, a 5-inch OLED display with a 720p resolution with no S Pen support, and a color depth of 16 million pixels. The camera, however, is a bit more interesting. The rear camera has a resolution of 13 megapixels and an aperture of f1.9, and the front-facing camera has a resolution of 5 megapixels and an aperture of f2.2. This smartphone can also record video like most other smartphones, however it's not spectacular, featuring a resolution of 1080p and a frame rate of 30 frames per second. This phone includes 2GB of RAM and 16GB of internal storage or ROM. For $100, I'd say that this is a fairly good deal. Now, as I said before, you can definitely get better specs out there with a slightly more underground brand. However, as this phone is Samsung, there will be excellent customer service if anything does go wrong, not to mention much more rigorous testing and a more stable user experience. First, let's talk about build quality. The J3 isn't fancy as it features a plastic back which is removable, which hasn't really been included in many smartphones since about 2013, and is one of the cost-cutting measures of this phone. This is the gold model, however there are other colours available, including white and black. Now, as far as build quality goes, this is pretty much the only negative. The center button is nice and responsive, the volume up and down are also very pleasant to press, it's nice and light so it can be carried around for longer, the size is convenient, and the screen is glass, unlike a lot of cheaper smartphones which may tend to use plastic phone screens. Speaking of the phone screen, this is perhaps the strongest point of this phone. Now, despite its low resolution, it is an OLED screen, which is rarely seen on phones of this price bracket, especially considering the fact that it is from a mainstream company. Now, as I previously mentioned, it is only 720p, however the colours look great with a rich contrasty image if a little oversaturated out of the box. The phone also supports the screen in the way that it's replaced the ambient light sensor, most of which are very slow and not all that great, with an outdoors mode, where the auto brightness would usually be. This gives the phone a little bit of extra brightness which wouldn't usually be necessary aside from on those bright days, and this feature works amazingly. Overall, the Samsung J3 has a very impressive screen which works very well, especially in bright situations. Moving on to software performance, the J3 runs Android 5.1.1, which is not the latest, along with the TouchWiz skin, which has now been Samsung's long-standing Android skin. Now this can be changed to a custom skin, but it's a clean skin which adds to the whole experience of the phone, and is one of my favourite Android skins to date. In terms of benchmark, the J3 scored 1,252 in Cinebench, which isn't great but is acceptable. Now, this doesn't really limit the phone, however, when I played my benchmark game on this phone, which was Dead Trigger 2, the highest end visuals were locked off to prevent game-breaking lag. Moving on, the J3's camera capabilities are acceptable, but they're far from outstanding. There are barely any manual features and auto HDR has been removed. Comparing against phones from a few years ago, such as the iPhone 6, the performance of the camera is excellent. However, in 2017, it's only acceptable, lacking dynamic range and low light performance. Closing off this review, we're going to talk about battery life. The J3 features a 2600 mAh battery, which I have found to last fairly well as long as you're not gaming or constantly watching videos. Overall, the Samsung J3 is a good budget smartphone from Samsung, however I would recommend getting a phone from Blue or Qbot in this price range, or getting a used flagship from eBay such as the Samsung S5 or the iPhone 6. Thank you for watching, remember to like the video, if you want to see more content like this then please subscribe, there's one thing left to say and that is goodbye.